Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. I've got a good guest on today, Shepard Ambellas. And the guy's been all over Twitter. He's a researcher. He's you know what? Honestly, usually I give intros to this, but what we do is we bring information that you guys don't know about. That's what we're trying to do. We don't talk about the mainstream stuff. And we've got a lot of breaking stuff with the banking failure, extreme weather, UFO sightings, the coming lockdowns. We're just going to get into all of that stuff. So let me bring him on. Hey, bud.
How's it going, Micah?
It's going really great, man. So we got a couple minutes beforehand to get to know each other a little bit, and let's just dive right in. So why are you the most censored man on Twitter?
Oh man, well, not just Twitter, just in general, like on every platform. I guess it goes back to I started doing journalism in 2009, and I went on the Alex Jones show and I exposed the mass graves that they were preparing for U.S. citizens. Not the FEMA coffins. That's kind of like a separate deal, but they actually went in, they were surveying cemeteries nationwide, military cemeteries, private, public, all these different burial plots, and they were saying, like, look, they were asking the cemetery heads, they were saying, how many graves can we fit per acre and all this if we pack them in, and they came up with these burial vaults. Where they're these concrete chambers, and they're all made out of concrete, pressed together, and they say they hold 4 caskets, but really they hold about 40 to 50 bodies, and there's concrete lids on them. So I caught them in Phoenix at this cemetery, a veteran cemetery. They were going in and opening up just acres and acres of land under the cover of darkness. And they had semi trucks going in and out, and dump trucks and all this stuff. And they dug down 10 to 12 feet, and they put ABC rock in for like compaction and drainage. And, you could tell it was all excavated out. And then they had a bunch of these burial vaults on a adjacent lot down the road, thousands and thousands of them just sitting there. And then they would go and put these in, and at night they would work all night, and then they would cover dirt over the top of them so that they could later, after a disaster, if there's a pandemic or something like that, they could peel the lids back and just throw people in it. And so that interested me, because I thought, well, would they do that? Why wouldn't they just burn people? And anyways, I found out all this is real. And
what was Alex's reaction to it?
He was real excited about my report, because it sounds like back then that was just something like, it was being uncovered. That was fair. That was new. And
so when was this again?
Like, in like 2009.
Okay, so it was right after the collapse, the last collapse.
Right.
Which is interesting, because I'm going to have you on right now talking about the next collapse.
Right. Right. So, and all that ties together, and which I found out later. But so through discovering these, I actually went on his show, and he was excited in terms of like, I'm a citizen journalist, like I'm actually doing work on this, like figuring it out. But at the time I didn't know much. I just told him the situation at the cemetery, and I interviewed some truck drivers and stuff. But as time went on, I started digging into it, and I found out there was these mass fatality and pandemic preparedness plans that every single state has independently. And they're pretty grim and gruesome. They get into high detail on things, and they're put into place for like meteor strikes, I guess nuclear war, pandemics.
Right. Well, we know that the IRS has a chapter in their manual that explains to the people in the IRS on how they can go and start collecting taxes 1 month after a nuclear explosion.
Oh wow. And also even the IRS, they have like a shotgun enforcement unit. It's been reported, and so that like it shows there's some preparedness for events. We can talk about it later, like FEMA and stuff. But in these pandemic preparedness plans that dovetail with FEMA, the Department of Homeland Security, and all these.
And this is separate from what Halliburton was doing, right?
Right. Okay. So when you get into these plans, you realize they're saying things like the state government can come in to like a grocery store and seize their refrigerated trucks to throw bodies in. They can it gets in the high detail on people are like, well, why won't they just burn bodies and incinerate them? Well, it gets in the high detail on how you can't do that because it's not efficient. It's actually quite hard to burn bodies, but also if there's any biohazard or radioactivity, it can release it into the air. Mm-hmm. So it goes into like why they need these mass graves, and there's teams that go out and handle all this stuff, and they started putting all this into play, and it dovetails into FEMA and the creation of FEMA, and it goes back to even space news like the Pioneer satellites and the NASA IRAS infrared satellite, where they discovered this large perturber or body or brown dwarf star system moving toward Earth that was emitting light and sound, and it was reported back in the early 80s in some mainstream publications. And
are you talking about the WOW signal, or is that something else?
It pretty much, they discovered what they termed Planet X, and there was various reports that came out where they talked about it. It was even mentioned in the New York Times, and they're like, after the IRAS launched in '83 in January, like toward late January, it already culminated all this data and sent it back, and there was people like saying, wow. But then before this, there was the pioneers, and they already knew that this was out there, this object. So they started thinking, like the governments, especially like the US government, but all governments are pretty much have done this when they found out about it. So they created their own FEMAs, and then they had like in the US during Ronald Reagan's administration, he talked about threats from space and stuff.
Yeah, he did. Well, we know that Carter got elected, and he physically said that he saw aliens. That wasn't long before his election. He was out in the public with it.
Right. And so a lot of these wars, even back into World War I and World War II, and the first incursion into Iraq and Operation Desert Storm, that was called Operation Planet X. And they went into this village, Al-Dawar, and they recovered technology and Sumerian tablets, and really it was all about kind of confirming more about this stuff. And so they made FEMA, and specifically,
if you could real quick describe to my listeners what they say FEMA is, and then what it actually really does, if you don't mind.
Well, it's a federal emergency management agency officially, and it's there to mitigate disasters and stuff, but you've heard, oh, well, they failed in Katrina, or they did good in this, and all of that's fine, and they got data, and they run preparedness drills, and they even run drills in conjunction with NASA for asteroid strikes, which we can get into because we're still in continuity of government from a major asteroid convergence that happened back during the lockdowns. And that's when they had those hospital ships out, and they called for trauma surgeons to be everywhere in the field hospitals.
Okay.
That was because they were expecting asteroid strikes. So they activated continuity of government and stuff. So getting up to the point of the lockdowns, and my film Shackled to Silence, which is available behind the Rockfin paywall if you're a premium member, I guess. I just put it behind there, and I'm going to have some other content at the Shepard Ambellas Rockfin channel. You can watch my film Shackled to Silence, or you can buy the DVD, links in the description. But you basically, the film, I went out and I investigated the lockdowns and what was going on. And so after all of this and talking with people like Jordan Maxwell and interviewing people all over the United States, I, as a journalist, and I also own
I'm a protege of Jordan Maxwell, by the way. I'm continuing.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm an astrotheologist. I continued his work, basically.
Awesome, bro. That's really cool. Yeah, that's really cool stuff. I'll have to have you on the show and talk about it sometime, man, because that is really fascinating. He was telling me all sorts of stuff. I have some exclusive interviews with him I haven't released, and he's talking about stuff like that. But yeah, so like I came to the determination through all of my and I almost feel like not just any journalist would come to this determination. It was kind of like my ride through journalism over the years. And also I was studying Planet X when I was like 14 years old and stuff. So I somehow like was put on this path. And you hear people talk about pieces here and there, but I really assembled a lot of information because when President Donald Trump, when they were talking about enacting the Stafford Act and the 50 governors declaring a national emergency for the invisible enemy, and Trump's like, I wish you would have told me. I wish you would have told me, to Pompeo. And at that point, they handed over the government to FEMA. And Donald Trump essentially stepped down, or his control like stood down to the secret government apparatus that FEMA was designed for in the first place, which was Planet X. So like although they did all these other disasters and stuff, there's a perturber moving into our system, and you can see that it's reported in the news right now. They're talking about rogue planets flying through our system. They're talking about Planet 9. They're openly admitting this. They're saying we have 2 moons. It's a lot of cover.
Have you seen the pictures of the 2 suns yet?
Right. There's a lot of that, and a lot more, like where before you might have thought, well, like some of it's CGI and stuff, a lot more real stuff's emerging, a lot more UFO sightings, because I believe this thing's like within proximity. They're admitting the Earth's core is stopping, which again is another cover story essentially for magnetic braking that goes on when this perturber comes in and starts kind of binding with our planet as it passes and stuff. So things will ramp up, so they know what's coming. And 2 years ago I was talking about how they're going to have arc storms in California, and my film Shackled to Silence, links in the description, it lays all this out. But basically we're getting to that point again, and they're going to start doing lockdowns and stuff over this, and all the governments worldwide are essentially using the invisible enemy as a cover to theoretically not really just kill us like everyone thinks, like they're just gonna exterminate us. They want to actually manage and save their populations, because they don't know what's going to happen where, because random earth changes and stuff are gonna. So we're seeing atmospheric rivers in California. We're going to see mud floods. The earth's going to shift. There's going to be sloshing. There's going to be up to 400-mile-an-hour winds at one point, maybe even 1,000-mile-an-hour straight line winds. Like as this thing moves in things can get worse, and sometimes this thing passes, like it's cyclical, so it happens every certain amount of years. But sometimes it passes, it wreaks less havoc than others because it's further away from Earth and stuff. So it's
So
a
some
whole.
people would call it Nibiru, right?
Well, it's a system. It's a brown dwarf star, so it's the binary component to our sun. Because most solar systems have two suns, and
Yeah, every star, every planet has a binary. Everything's binary.
yeah, and our binary sun apparently is burnt out, and it's a brown dwarf star. So what comes with that is a whole system, and it's on some oblong orbit.
Yeah.
So it comes through, and it appears like all this is happening. So I have proof of this, and I've talked about it. There's a link in the description that says must watch this video or something like that, must watch interview. In there's information that shows this and details it, but I was appearing on Crowdsource the Truth back in 2020, and I was talking about how this is all going to go down, and how Planet X is coming. They're expecting asteroids. They're gearing up. They were sending in military, a lot of military. Turns out Newsweek reported it was the biggest military buildup internally in the U.S. since World War II. And so that I noticed they were moving around. They activated the Jeep plan, and they were prepared to dig the president out of rubble. And around April 18th, 19th, and 20th, over 40 asteroids, which we have all the asteroid data and stuff in that link. You can see it. They converge on Earth. Never, like something that's never happened before. It was like all these asteroids just came in, but they all pretty much missed. They all missed or were thwarted or something. I don't know. But during that time, world governments, everyone was in lockdown. They didn't really know what could happen. And there's more of this coming because there's more debris. So there's more of these near Earth objects daily. They're not seeing them. They put a stand down on these telescopes because only the military has one that's operating. Biden told other ones to stand down. They also.
Well, I think the Vatican's still operational too, but that's
what's that?
I think the Vatican's
right.
Telescope.
So exactly right. So only people that basically know what's coming are operating these telescopes. So there's several going, but a lot of them were told to stand down. And so that all dovetails into this. And as these atmospheric rivers, which I was talking about 2 years ago, and I said it was going to happen in California, ramp up, then volcanic activity and the potential for Yellowstone to go and population relocation, these chemical fires, in my opinion, and like the fires in California, are all to disperse people certain ways, whether that's to herd them into certain regions, or they think there's going to be asteroid impacts in those areas or something. I don't know, but it's some kind of displacement. And the U.S. government even has contracts with foreign governments to house displaced U.S. citizens through 2024. People can go on my website, intelhub.news, and type in Yellowstone, and that will pop up. So, yeah, there's just lots of stuff going on that front. And, and then I've put all this stuff together, and I'm trying to come back and do this full time, and I haven't really gotten the support I need to do it. And I feel like it's crazy because like a lot of people think like what I'm talking about right now is crazy talk, but they're going to come to realize they're not getting real information anywhere, and that what I'm talking about is actually going on. And I know an awful lot about it.
So let's bring this into the banking thing. And basically, first of all, how does a bank even collapse on a Sunday? I don't even know how that's possible.
Right.
What do you have based on that information? What have you come across?
Well, basically, they had a meeting back in January with the FDIC, and they were like, we can't have any of this information come out on this. we were playing clips of that on the Rained Out Rantcast broadcast yesterday, but it dovetails into this because these elite, a certain level of them knew, they're getting into their underground bases, like military type people. This was all openly admitted. General O'Shaughnessy retreated into Cheyenne Mountain. They gave Pompeo authority to act as president independently, along with like 2 other generals, and they changed the chain of succession and the dedicated survivor to the president. And that's why we see a Biden puppet show and a masked Biden and Bidens that don't look like Biden. And people are thinking he's not in the White House and all this weird stuff, because there's really no presidency right now. But they couldn't really run Trump again, because the way things were going, it would have looked like he got left in, especially being under continuity of government. So they ran like a puppet show, in my opinion. And that's why we're in this like state of limbo where FEMA's really in control, but they're running a puppet show. And that's why it seems all weird. Theoretically, Trump's still the president, but I think he's fully handed over power pretty much. Like, I don't think he really has any power. As crazy as all that sounds, that's, in my opinion,
well, that's a major talking point for Q.
Well, right. And, which is also, if you think about it, if what I'm saying is really going on because I have proof where they enacted continuity of government. Nothing I'm saying is like a conspiracy. Like, I could pull all this up. It's all reported, but they hid it. They just like reported tidbits of it. And so if you think about it, like, okay, say you're a government and you're going into continuity of government because Planet X is coming, right? What do you tell the people? What are the protocols? No one knows, because that's the secretest plans ever on the planet, right? So what do you tell the people? Do you tell them you're gonna, the current president's just gonna remain a dictator? They'd be like, oh hell no, nah, especially because like Donald Trump was in, so think of what like the left would have done, right? So like, what are the protocols for this? No one knows, but we know that FEMA's been called by sitting politicians the secret government. And the way that Donald Trump declared the Stafford Act and had the 50 governors independently do all that, that was the final deal that signed the final FEMA thing. And he's on video, Trump's on video saying, you can go on intellihub.news and see this, where he's saying, look, I've turned over all power of the president to FEMA. And he goes, it was nice being your president. It was nice to have been your president.
Wow.
And see, but they hid all this. They reported it barely in like live broadcast. It's not like they reported it. It's like they recorded it in a live, and then they don't really like touch on it. But then they send Q out to say what you were just saying. Donald Trump is still president, which he might very well be, but he's probably powerless at that point, but he's still kind of locked in. But if that's really going on, because that's a continuity of government protocol, then do they run it as a Q psyop to where that all even sounds crazy, right? I'm going to try to pull up a report from Newsweek where they were talking about the secret continuity of government plans. And
you should be able to present your screen.
Okay. So here is Newsweek confirming all of my reporting. This was the only source that came in and really confirmed everything I said on Crowdsource the Truth back in early 2020, but they came out after and they said, look, here's the top secret plans if coronavirus cripples the government, and it says that contingency plans exist, but these super secret plans are all crazy, and it starts talking about how they activated the Jeep plan, and there's these different con plans.
Can you explain the Jeep plan to people who don't know it?
Well, basically, I don't have it pulled up right in front of me, not like real refreshed on it, but basically like the Jeep plan right here, the Joint Emergency Evacuation Plan. It organizes transportation for the Secretary of Defense and other national security leaders so that they can leave Washington like in a hurry, right? And they can get to their underground tunnels, to their very high-speed transit systems underground or various airports. And they brought in all these radar arrays and they put them all around DC, and they brought in those hospital ships and they put out trauma surgeons. I interviewed a bunch of doctors, including Dr. Richard Urso in my film Shackled to Silence, links in the description, but where they said there's no reason they would want 30,000 to 70,000 trauma surgeons out in those hospital ships for COVID. They would want virologists. Mm-hmm. So then we found out there was this asteroid convergence in this, and this says that General like O'Shaughnessy and stuff, they went underground, but see who's authorized to take action on their own in extraordinary circumstances where duly constituted local authorities are able to control the situation. The conditions include large-scale unexpected civil disturbances involving significant loss of life or wanton destruction of property. The Joint Chiefs of Staff coded these rules in 2018, and also in 2018 there was near-Earth object preparedness plans released by NASA where they said these objects are such a threat. So we went in the continuity of government, and so did everyone else over this. When things get rugged, when there's threats around, they put us in lockdown and ramp up COVID. Coincidentally, Johns Hopkins Institute, who controls the COVID death map and the COVID maps, they also control NASA's DART asteroid impactor program to divert asteroids. And the reason they do that is because they know where asteroid impacts could or might be, and so they're just placing things on the COVID map so they can justify emergencies to move populations around. And they've got that all operational and working, and that's where the contact tracing and ID comes in. Yeah, it's kind of New World Order-ish, but
people have this idea
that government genuinely like wanting to protect their population and tracking and tagging them later. And they talked about, we're going to have military driving school buses in New York, Pennsylvania. It's all mainstream news. We got military driving school buses now. We want to track and track all the kids in case there's a disaster. We want to be able to lock all kids down in schools immediately.
What I was going to say is that people are under the impression that like an asteroid is going to be like this size or the size of a table. We're talking about rocks being hurtled from outer space at thousands and thousands and thousands of miles per second that are probably 4 to 5 times the size of Los Angeles.
Right.
This station.
Not only that, when this perturber comes in and starts getting closer and closer, volcanoes and super volcanoes can go off. So COVID mass. Okay, COVID mass. Why did they make COVID? Because that got the production of mass going and everything you need. They went and they seized air tanks. They got all the oxygen bought up because they're expecting volcanic ash in the air. They're expecting all these so.
Well, they say that Yellowstone's overdue. Yellowstone's supposed to blow every 100,000 years or so. Number one, it's overdue. Number two, if it does blow, it'll take out at least half of the United States.
Yeah, maybe even more. There was ash deposits.
Well, then you have
last time all the way to the East Coast, and also there's the potential for like a Carrington event, an EMP. So they're telling us China's going to do it. There's these balloons, but really the sun's just crazy. There's because of this, a whole chunk blew off the sun. There's stuff going on. I got people in the Senate going into emergency secret meetings talking about space news. And then I got banks collapsing because people in the inner circle are starting to find out that this planet's moving in, and people are pulling out their money everywhere on the inner
Yeah,
circle.
let's talk a little bit about the banks collapsing.
So basically, they
You want
know,
to start with SVB, or do
and
you
they
want
know that these arc storms and stuff, all this stuff's going to get so bad, it's going to bankrupt everything and all the insurance companies and everything. So certain people are maneuvering, and now we're seeing the beginnings of that, and we're going to see much more as things ramp up and go on. So quite possibly, it's going to get wild here in the very near future.
Mm-hmm.
And all this ties in, by the way. So like where none of it seems explainable if you listen to the mainstream news. Like no one can explain what's going on. Everything in my film and everything where I even thought, well, this is kind of wild. I mean, I was like pretty sure, but like it's still progressing daily, just like my film said, to like scenarios and data points that are just lining up. There's like hundreds of them, and you're like, wow, this is just keeps going. So it looks like I mean, I can't know this all for sure, but based on everything that I'm seeing, it actually looks like this is all transpiring in actuality, And we've got them admitting they went into continuity of government. We've never got them admitting they came out of it. So I assume that it's pretty much every nation worldwide is aware of this and in the same, you can tell they're doing the same protocols and the same lockdowns and all that. And they're talking about the Great Reset, the elites. That's because they do these resets often because they know how to navigate them.
Whenever the World Economic Forum and all that bullshit, right?
Yeah. So while people think that's like a New World Order like thing that they're just gonna bring out and drop, yeah, but it's like a byproduct of what's going on that they know of.
So you're talking about, you have all the planets, right? You have the sun, and then you have all the planets circumnavigating it at different areas, right? All like this.
Right.
You're talking about the 9th planet that does one of these.
Right.
Right? And that's known as, the ancients called it Nibiru. They said it as a 3,600 year elongated.
Yeah, well, Planet X, or the 10th planet, because they downgraded Pluto.
Yes.
And they downgraded Pluto, I think, in a diversion to distract from a search term. So you wouldn't search Planet X or Planet 10. And then I think they came out with Planet 9 as a hypothetical Planet X that kind of doesn't really exist, and what they're telling us about it is like disinfo. So if you can imagine, there's like ops going on everywhere like that. I gotta grab some water real quick. Can we take a quick intermission?
Yeah.
Okay, let me grab some water real quick. 1 second.
Go for it, man. All right, guys. So we're talking, everything is connected. Remember what I tell you guys when I do my work? I say the universe has a way of being very simple and easy to understand. And I talk about Einstein saying that if something is very complicated and you can't explain it to a child, then you don't have a full understanding of it. And that's kind of how I treat my work, is I kind of bring you along as a newbie, and then I kind of introduce more complicated things as I go along. But here, you got to understand how everything works together. These pieces fit together, because if you're just looking at one angle, it's not going to make sense. But when you have these pieces, then you start to fit them together the way Shep does, who basically started IntelliHub. If any of you guys ever heard of IntelliHub, it's a great source. It's a great resource. Go there. A lot of stuff, is coming out today is going to make people uncomfortable or worried, and I can completely understand that. Believe me, I completely understand that, because I try and bring peace and love and stuff to my channel. But yeah, Shep, I was just telling everybody how things have a way of making sense. If you look at an individual slice from something, it's not going to make sense overall. But when you see how these pieces are fitting together, like the banking collapse, like the mass graves, like the this, the that, the planet, everything seems to make sense.
This is on my website, intellihub.news, intellihub.news. And this is what you want to go to. It's an 11,000 word report that culminates all of my, it's not like all of my work, but this puts it together, kind of what we were talking about, but even way more. And it talks about the need to support my journalism too, because who's doing this shit, coming up with 11,000 word reports for free and shit? That, but like, it brings you through a timeline, and then it talks about like they went into secret meetings back then. They were talking about this stuff. All the executive orders, the Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump talking about, he goes, this is only the beginning of what we are doing now. And we're now in a different phase. Oh no, my dogs are going crazy.
We had some very old and obsolete rules to the U.S. Constitution that we had to live with that worked under certain circumstances, but not under mass circumstances. People don't know what they're looking at half the time. People really don't. You know, you don't realize how much stuff is behind the scene. And also, guys, I don't know if you've ever seen these deep fakes before, or if you've ever seen how a movie's made before, but you know, you have TV shows and everything is either CGI'd or it's green screened now. So to think that the president is not giving a briefing in a random place with a green screen behind him, you do not know how television works. Why would they do such an archaic method of having a camera there set up, moved from 1 to 2 to 3 cameras? You have no idea. You have no idea. The backgrounds are easy, and I was just getting into the idea of deep fakes too.
Right. That's another thing. So in this on March 13th, 2020, when they started going into continuity government, they stripped away the Constitution, and Trump said we had some very old and obsolete rules, and I put the U.S. Constitution, because that's what he's talking about, that we had to live with, that worked under certain circumstances, but not under mass circumstances.
So don't you think that's a slippery slope, Shep? If they could just do away with the Constitution under emergency provisions, can they find lesser and lesser emergency provisions to do it?
They've been doing that for years, but you know, when I first got into this, yeah, of course there's a new world order and they're doing this and they're doing it like how you would think, right? You know what I'm saying? Like in an evil way. But in this particular case, and what they designed FEMA for, and what all these governments appear to be doing, is genuinely almost trying to save their populations or mitigate to their best ability, depending on scenarios that they've ran. So like Trump said,
that's why we're getting so much information about a rogue spaceship in the sky and all that stuff that's coming out now.
Because you're going to start seeing stuff. So another part of this is, people are like, oh, they're going to operate Bluebeam. They're going to activate Bluebeam.
Yeah, I was just going to say they're going to operate. They're going to activate Bluebeam.
In my opinion, so we were able to confirm at Intel. Okay, so like let's go over this real quick. So Donald Trump says they were for a long time. They were in place for a long time. He's talking about the Constitution, and we're breaking them down now, and they were useful for certain instances, but not for this. To unleash the full power of the federal government of this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. And he had to have the 50 governors in the Stafford Act to do a very special one. And that activated then they had this initiation of the Presidential Near Earth Object Preparedness Strategy Plan. Oh, I got to fix that link. That's right. I checked that. So they had this literal, I could pull it up if we search it. It's called the Near Earth Object Strategy Preparedness Plan or something, but it gets into it. And then this goes in and it breaks down and it talks about NASA and they're preparing for this stuff. And then President Trump cryptically admits he's no longer the president. He says it has been, the American people have so disciplined. It has been my honor to be their president. It has been my great honor to have been their president. And he goes, I got a big decision coming, and I hope to God it's the right one. Then he said to Pompeo, this is not about, or Pompeo said, this is not a matter of retribution. It's a matter of moving forward. We are in a live exercise here. We got one chance to get this right. He goes, Trump said, I wish you would have told me, because they made him hand over power that day. They had all these military heads there seizing the government from him. They totally took over. Here's Planet X 101 for dummies, basically, like a real breakdown of just like, so people can like get this information real quick, because it's too much information, and this is just a little tip of the iceberg. But that's intelhub.news. And yeah, I need more support so I can keep bringing more information out about this as it comes. There's people like this lady appeared on Mr. MB333 channel, and like people could laugh this up. She filmed and her family witnessed it at like 2 a.m. in Arizona, like 3 months ago or more. A planetoid-sized object next to the moon, and it was only visible for a certain amount of time. And I already knew I was waiting for a science like this. So that sounds crazy, but that's like one of the first reports. I had a report before that a couple years prior, when this thing was a little smaller and visible. And now we're seeing all of a sudden there was a huge spike of videos and UFOs. So on intelhub.news, we independently confirmed. I had someone come on my show where this show got taken down too. They banned it. It's called South Carolina Nuclear Installation Personnel Saw a Pill-Shaped Object Hovering in the Sky Before U.S. Air Force Shot Down the Balloon. So that Commander Fravor guy saw the Tic Tac objects, and I never knew if that dude was like a government shill or what. I was trying to figure that out, But now I've had a listener who's a G4S security head, and his security crew, they witnessed a pill-shaped object hovering above their nuclear facility as the Chinese balloon was flying by. So they happened to be in the path of that balloon, but this thing was actually hovering. So this, to me, is independent confirmation to me that those Tic Tacs are real. Mm-hmm. And this is more confirmation that probably like the Anunnaki and the people from Planet X or whatever are more within proximity, and we're going to start seeing crazy stuff. There's also the return of giants. There's that TikToker that went missing because he spotted the giant up on the mountain. And all this like kind of ties into. So it all sounds really weird and bizarre, but there's just sign after sign after sign, kind of like they say in the Bible, look for the signs. There's these massive trumpet sounds in the skies, just like crazy stuff going on.
So for people, real quick, for people, we mentioned Project Bluebeam, but I didn't explain it right away. What Project Bluebeam is basically is this. I think it's been uncovered as fact, right? This is exactly. This is something that actually existed, right, as a plan.
Well, yeah, right. So it's a Air Force or military.
Basically, it's going to be a giant hologram projection of either Jesus, Muhammad, Moses, God, whatever you want to call it, and it's going to cull everybody into falling down, thinking that it's the rapture or that it's the end times.
They could even go as far as they could project UFOs with light and sound and tell us it's an alien.
I mean, look what they're doing at sporting events with all those little drones making giant pictures in the sky.
They got sky mapping like at the Seattle Space Needle.
Yeah.
If y'all check out sky mapping. Sky mapping, Space Needle. They basically, this is in the real sky. So imagine they can just put UFOs up there. So, but the thing is like, okay, so a lot of people think they're going to do blue beam, and then that's going to make a lot of people think that that these real events that are happening are fake. So I have this theory now based on all my research that they will do a blue beam and act like there's aliens, but they'll
Now, is
fail.
that going to be tied into Agenda 2030?
Yeah, because all of this, they know Apophis is coming in 2029, the asteroid. They know that there's a good probability that will hit. They know that before that, all this Planet X stuff's going to ramp up. And they do have to have some of the population cold and controlled. And that's why they did the, the stab or whatever,
Yeah.
And but they got, so all of this, so where before it's just people talking about this like it's a new world order agenda and they're pushing us into a new world order, they actually have a timeline based on this planet moving in, and that's what is the main driver for everything. And some of it's pretty rational and realistic planning if you really think about it. Like, okay, you got a planet coming that's going to wipe out all living life in New York City. Okay, great. Where are these rotting bodies going to go, and are they going to pollute the water table? Mm-hmm. And how do you handle that? And do you just cull like a certain amount of people so that doesn't happen, and then like herd the rest? And then you know what I mean? Like how, like, so does someone have to decide this shit or not? I'm not like siding with New World Order. I'm just saying like you could kind of see how just even a legitimate government with their planning, how that all works in to be right.
So what information do you have on the banking system?
Well, just that insiders know what's coming and all this stuff's going to kind of unfold. That's why you had over 200 reportedly as of several years ago, 200 top CEOs in the world quit and step down. They're basically, they know what's coming, so they're going to enjoy life the last little bit and get their little base set up and figure it out, and that's,
is this why they built underground cities? Because
and they have like those Chinese ghost cities that are replicas of Paris. That's because they can relocate populations. Like the people of Paris might go to China or something. Who knows?
I don't think people really understand just how monstrous these underground cities are. Like they have fully functioning.
There's literally
like trains, like Japan trains.
I've talked to someone that's been in one, and they were like, Shepard, it was literally a freestanding underground city in an expansive cavern.
Wow.
And
they have trains, they have, I'm sure
trains that can go from New York. They're called VHST, very high speed transit. They can go from New York to Los Angeles in 1 hour, 11,000 mile an hour trains, magneto leviton, vacuum sealed.
You're talking about the trains that levitate, right?
Right, in a vacuum tube.
With magnets, right?
Yeah, and
those are why we don't have those on Earth is beyond me. It's got to be because it's expensive. Because
they do have. I mean, they have those in their underground bases, and it's also old technology too. They've had stuff. See, this cycle happens so often that's why you see these parallel civilizations where like it looked like they had technology, and then they didn't. They had that all go. It's just too much to talk about, in one thing. But basically, that all ties in, and if people start watching my shows and checking out my articles, they can kind of like piece more of this together, because I've really done a job at like culminating it, and watching my film, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I would suggest everybody go read that 11,000 word article, and if you can donate a little bit. I personally have donated.
I appreciate that, and all your support is really helped, brother, because I made a jump to doing this full time, so I'm back to doing this full time, but I don't quite have the support to do it. Like
you will.
Literally, like my internet's getting shut off later today. I got to go down there and figure it out, but I got to figure it out. But but I'm gonna just do it because I know what's coming, and they're really trying to stop my information from coming out too. But I actually know what's coming. I mean, I've watched this ramp up since I've been talking about this for over a decade, but even since the release of my film just a couple years ago, there's just data point after data point stacking up, racking up. And it's, being a journalist, you can't have things like that happen. Like I can't go in and build some conspiracy and have it like work out for me. right? Like, I mean, you can kind of like, if write some Q stuff or something and like but it's not, all in all, it's not gonna keep progressing in the future, and things just keep happening that
Right.
your film was talking about or whatever. It's like these atmospheric rivers in California, just solar activity, the ramping of all this is mainstream news too. Like, people can check it out, like asteroids at an all-time high, near earth objects at an all-time high, space threats. They're going into secret meetings over space threats. Just everything we talked about on this broadcast.
Can I ask you a question though? This might sound like beginner level type stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
is that why Trump created Space Force?
Maybe, that's probably what it looked like happened was, so they had this guy, General O'Shaughnessy,
Mhm.
and he buckled down and braced in and buttoned down the government, and they went into continuity of government. But it looked like the guy that took his position over, I can't remember the guy's name offhand, is actually, that's the Space Force commander.
Mhm.
And yes, so what you are saying is absolutely right. It's a lot deeper than that. The Space Force commander is now essentially in charge of a lot of that stuff, and NORAD and all that,
Mhm.
Northcom. That the reason that commander is because this guy is someone who was privy to this knowledge for like the last 2 decades or something. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he
Yeah.
was the Planet X, he knew it was moving in, him and his team type thing.
So
So
is this whole thing with Ukraine, Russia, and China and the problems we're gonna have, is that just a distraction to keep
that's
people?
all fake, and it's a cardboard war, because they're either you there's two theories that I have. Is one is, obviously they're funneling money over there, and but besides all that, and that might be a real stable region, and they're building an arc city there,
Mhm.
and that's how that all works. But also, it might be a region that's going to get struck or hit real bad, is another thought that goes through my mind, and they want to be able to declare a war zone to push people away or something, right? But I would lean more toward like an arc city type thing, that they're all going in. They're not even filming from there, like Biden and them. They're acting like they're there, and they're not even there. But yeah, that all ties into this.
So
So
do you know under which cities? Because we know that Colorado, the Denver airport, has an underground city. We know
yeah,
that DC does. I'm assuming New York does. Do you know of any other ones that do?
yeah, Vegas. There's lots of them. There's according to Phil Schneider, there's over 130 underground bases. There really is. I actually know how some are connected for a fact, and I actually know exactly to the foot underground, essentially, where these tunnels exist. For instance, like, I could go walk.
Can you reach any of them by going into any of the cave systems in the US?
Yes, and I know I actually know of something, and I'm thinking about in the future, like possibly doing like some type of doc or something. But it's hairy, but I know of it, and it exists, and it's, for me to know of what I know, is pretty rare. I mean, it's not like you can just go get into an underground base from an air shaft or something. This stuff is, I know positioning of tunnels, and I know potential entrances to a couple, and it's pretty wild. And
Mhm.
yeah, I want to go check it out in the future.
Okay. Cool, man. So you were talking about, let's finish up with this. Talk to me about the coming lockdowns or what we might
Well,
be
it's
seeing
kind
coming.
of like, the first set of COVID, they started beta testing stuff, but they ramped that in as the convergence of asteroids was ramping up, that I was telling you about, and the
Mhm.
field hospitals rolled out, and trauma surgeons and stuff. So as we roll into any kind of danger point or period, or as see, they think there's going to be a mass psychosis. That's what that article on IntelliHub was about too, because they've already put in laws in place, especially in New York and other places, where like they can detain people indefinitely if they think they're crazy. and basically do what they want with them. So when people are standing out in the street because they see that planet and they're just like falling to their knees, they'll round them up. And that's what the Rex 84 camps are for. And that's what those COVID hospitals for. That's much like the insane asylums back in the day during the Tartarian realm and the orphan trains in the last reset. But they're a modern style asylum, because during the last event there was some psychosis like that too. And also with the passing of planets and comets, it's documented that people go into cannibalism because there's space dust. The moon's turning red right now from iron oxide deposits from the brown dwarf system, and so are waters on Earth. Like in certain places it's been documented a little bit. People are finding this dust on their cars lately. So it's getting like really weird. So I don't know. I'm just kind of like monitoring it and wait, like, I'm just kind of like waiting for some like super solid like signs. But really there is, if like, like that can sound so crazy, like, oh, some lady went on Mr. MB333 and witnessed a planetoid sized object by the moon for like 10 minutes, and so did her family, and she even filmed it. But why wouldn't everyone see this? This is the kind of shit that's going on right now, because for one, this thing's a brown dwarf and it soaks up all light like a black hole, basically. So you're not going to see this thing until it's too late. But the times that you can see it are highly limited.
Right.
And so I don't know. I'm just like kind of monitoring stuff. I've noticed a ramp up in UFO activity. I've noticed a ramp up in all this stuff that we've been talking about, just like
funny too, because now that the mainstream public is talking about UFOs, the conspiracy theorists that usually get everything right are automatically telling people, no, there's nothing to it.
Right. Now, see, they ran some good, that's what I'm saying with this blue beam, where people are going to say they're going to actually run blue beam, but my thought is they're going to try and fail at it. So they'll do blue beam so shitty that the talk will be like this: see, I told you they're running blue beam. All them UFOs are blue beam. Because like when the skies start filling up from the Anunnaki, they're going to want to, for as long as they can, deter people before they find out this shit's like real, right? So it could get weird.
Damn, man. Well, Shep, man, thank you for coming on. I'm going to have all the links in the description. I'm going to upload this right away. I'll shoot it to you an email. Please tell everyone, guys, IntelliHub it's amazing. Please go to it and read that article and look around. Please tell everyone where they can find you and how they can support you.
All of my Shepard Ambellas YouTube videos or Rumble or Rockfin have in the descriptions all the links to support. And atn.live, the Ambellas Talk Network, the web URL is atn.live. There's a pledge button. Also go there, catch all the live shows. I do a show 5 days a week, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, atn.live.
Chapman, thank you, brother. I will hopefully we'll have you back on soon. And I would hate to say that you were right about anything.
I know. It's crazy. It's interesting for me to see all of this and just like wonder, am I the world's craziest dude where like 7,000 data points matched up magically when you can't even get 3 to match up normally? Or, or is something going on? It's just bizarre.
Hey, man. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother. Thanks, Micah.